Hey guys, it's Harry Confucius, and today I'm going to run you through some sub-bass processing and mid-bass processing that you can apply to any genre, not necessarily just drum and bass, like the beat I've got loaded up here, but this would be the same sort of thing I would do to hip-hop, house, dubstep, anything really. Just really looks at how you can fatten up, add weight, and add a lot of warmth to the low end in your sub and low mid-bass. So up top, I've just quickly loaded up the same drum pack from the previous tutorial that I did on quick drum processing. So we've got Derek up the top, and we got the bass down below. So I've just used a sampled Reese bass with the EQ off. It sounds like this. Alright, just a standard old school Reese bass sound. So what I've done is just add a low pass filter over it, just so we can capture those low mids. And we really want that low, nice warm sounding tone. So what I'll do is I will start by grabbing that LFO and cutting it off at 100 Hertz. From there, I would ensure that everything, all the information is in direct mono. So listen to that now. Let's solo that. Okay, now, I mean, there's sub there and all of that, but to me it's sounding a bit sort of weak and basic. So we'll start by grabbing some saturation. So you can, if you're unable to, you can just grab the warm up the lows option and start mixing the dry in with the wet. From there, I would add some limiting with a relatively quick look ahead time and start giving it some volume. Notice how it was just clipping a bit too much, so we'll pull that back. We'll change to a slower look ahead. Slow release time. Okay. From there, I would look at maybe a mild touch of multi-band compression just on those lower frequencies, so we mix that in. And then from there, it would be some post EQing, so you can just copy and paste over the previous EQ that we got there. We'll just notice that there may be some information created above 100 Hertz. So the point that I want to get across, that a post EQ is always vital in terms of ensuring that any information, any processing that you've done is ensuring that you're going to get rid of the information that processing has created. Because as you've noticed, the saturation and the limiting has added stereo information or information above 100 Hertz. So we'll go back down and re-cut off all the sub at 100 Hertz. And then from there, we'll just double check and ensure that everything's in mono. So we'll chuck another mono utility on there. And we'll probably tone back the volume just a little bit. Now from there, you could add a bit of a spike in boost the lower frequencies that you feel like it's lacking, like if you're listening to it in a sub, in your living room or in your studio, and you feel that this sort of 40-50 hertz is lacking. You can spike those little, peak those little areas. Don't be afraid. Just give it, as long as it's not clipping and sounding distorted, you can really boost those lower frequencies. And with a sub, you'll just notice a massive impact. Things to avoid in this process is if you're seeing that this note here, being a G sharp, is the lowest note in your bass line melody progression, that, well, it's only playing at 40 hertz, so I can cut everything below 40 hertz and it's not going to affect it too much. Well, in fact, this air under here that you can see actually creates the impact and that low end rumble that you will find here when you're out of the club listening to a real bass heavy track. So if you cut that off, your track will sound hollow and not have as much fat, warm low end. So make sure that you don't touch that roll off, and you can always change that to a shelf EQ and just give it a bit of a low end boost if you feel like it's just sort of lacking. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind. Now, from there, I would like to ensure that I've got 3 levels to my bass. So it would be sub, mid, and then high. So generally the frequency bands that I work in is 0 to 100 for your sub, 100 to 250 for low mid, and then mid bass is, high bass is everything, top bass is everything above that. So what I'll go through from there is just duplicate that down a channel, and I would start by, I'm just going to get rid of everything that we've got here. I'm going to turn this EQ around, so I'm going to high pass it at 100. And now I just really want those low mid-range harmonics. Oops. Really want those low mid-range harmonics. So I'm going to cut this off at 250 hertz. Now, once again, I would start with some saturation. So we'll grab a bit warmer and just mix it in. And then I would do some limiting. We'll just grab the Ableton stock limiters just for an example. Things you can look at to increase the width, the stereo imaging, is something like a tremolo, just with a very mild dry-wet ratio. So that's just widened it up a bit. You could even add a slight bit of chorus, just to really get some low width on it. But just if you are going to add stereo imaging to your bass, just make sure that you always pull it back to mono to see if there's any phasing. Sounds pretty good. So we notice that we're coming in very harsh around that mid-range, so we will just rechuck that post EQ back on just to make sure we've got nothing but the frequencies that we initially wanted to start with. And we'll turn the mono off but bring the volume back down a bit. So this is before and after. Now in unison,
make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer. In every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
Okay. So from there, would look to have a listen in terms of the kick-bass ratio, the kick-bass relation with the drums playing. Now notice that there's no side chaining, so there's a very loud thud and boom when the kick overlaps with the sub. So we'll go into some side chaining ratios. So typically I would like to add a compressor in behind or in front of the EQ, because just due to the standard Ableton compressors adding information and a click to when sidechaining, we will always want to have a post EQ after to make sure we get rid of that feedback and information. So with the compressor, I would start by opening the compressor up, routing the sidechain to the kick wherever it may be. For drums, for subs, I always use a 5-to-1 ratio is a very good number to start with. An instant attack, and with a drum and bass or a standard EDM bass, DnB or hip hop kick, you're looking at a release time of between 10 to 15 milliseconds. As I know that my kick is currently a bit of a longer, boomier kick, I'm going to set the release time to 15 to allow enough time for the kick to complete its impact in the sub-region before allowing the bass to come back up again. So I generally would look at a threshold of -22 to -20 decibels, and you can leave it on peak or RMS, whatever you prefer the sound of. Now, that sounds pretty good by itself. Let's have it in a listen to it in relation with the kick. I believe that the release time is too long, so we'll turn that back to 10 milliseconds. Sounds pretty good. Now we'll copy and paste that the compressor onto the mid bass, and once again we will put that behind the post EQ, however taking the volume back to around 14 or 15 decibels. So we're still getting a bit of bounce and side chaining in those low mids that will also get quite full and muddy if we're not applying it to those two regions. Notice with the threshold all the way down on the mid bass, it sounds very choppy. With a no threshold, it sounds too full and too boomy and muddy. Now notice with a bit of side chaining in the low mids, it sounds clean, dynamic, and bouncy. Okay, moving on. Now, we've got Derek and Bob sorted. We've done our parallel send and reverb send on our drums. And in relation, the kick and the bass are sounding pretty tight. We could probably have a look at bringing back the drums or the kick a little bit. Okay, now what I'd do from here, I mean everything is sounding fairly tight. I would in your group for your bass, I would grab some glue compression on the low end. So in Ableton, you could just simply use any compressor or glue compressor, but in Ableton, it's already got a built-in option for the low extender, so you can just use that. Now I'll drag the dry wet all the way back to 0 and then slowly mix in. Notice that added some nice warmth to the bass. Now I think the volume needs to come back a little bit. And something that you can look at doing also is some more post EQing, just to ensure that everything's still in a nice place on the frequency spectrum. And yes, it is. Another thing that you can do is just check that everything's still in mono, so you can turn the mid-side mode on. Notice how some stereo information was created between 90 to 100 Hertz. We don't want that, so we'll cut that out and cut everything off at 120 Hertz, and then add a secondary low pass from 250. Now, we've contained the stereo imaging on the bass, and we can move on to the next step. So from there, I would look at creating a return track. Once again, you can, for time's sake, add a parallel compression bus up, go over the back, and send all information to the parallel compressor for your bass bus. Now there are two options, two things that you can do. You can either route your sub to go to and have an independent sub processing parallel compression bus, or you can route all your bass information to that one bus. So for today, we'll just route everything to the one bus and see how we go. So we've got our glue compressor there, and we've turned the send all the way up to C. What we then go and do is under C, is take the volume all the way down and then mix in. So we'll solo the bass and look at what the parallel bus does to the low end. Instantly more warmth and depth. So we will go and on to the next step, which will be, if you feel like the subs isn't warm and has enough presence and low end, what you can do from there is go in and add some more saturation or multiband compression, targeting those areas, or some EQing. So what I would go to next, if I felt like it was lacking, is add a saturator, and we'll go a soft sine, targeting 70 Hertz with a drive of 2.5, and then mix in. We'll see how that sounds. And we'll put the soft clip on. If it feels like it needs a bit more EQing and a bit more bottom end, you could always just add a little spike here or there where you feel it needs. And also, you could add a nice little shelf EQ or something and boost everything under, let's say, 80 Hertz. Give it a decibel or two with a shelf EQ. And yeah, there you end up with some nice, fat, crispy, low-end bass and sub bass that you can apply to pretty much any track. So today's pointers were separate into frequency bands. So keep your sub as just your sub. So everything from 0 to 100 hertz. Keep your low mid bass as everything from 100 to 250 hertz. Ensure that your sub is always dead mono. The side chaining of the bass, saturation, limiting, compression, parallel send, and yeah, then mix into taste. You can kind of take the parallel any way you want, get creative with it. Don't be afraid to boost that EQ. See how far you can push your sub before it distorts or sounds muddy, or look at how far you can push your subs and how much warmth and punch you can get them. I think you'll be really surprised at the results. If you're mixing through headphones, you have to train your ears for a while to see how far you can go. But if you're listening in a studio with a studio sub there, you'll definitely be able to notice the methods that I've implemented today via a quick session. So I'll just play the beat on it with the processing on and off it once again. Okay, that was on. And with all the processing off. Big difference in terms of the amount of warmth, impact, and thud there is. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you found it useful, and look forward to seeing you on the next round of tutorial videos, where I'll go further into depth in terms of sound design and methods that you can use to get creative and really raw